Okay, let's unpack this immediately.
Let's do it.
We've all encountered the language of attachment styles, right? I mean, especially in modern dating culture.
Oh, it's everywhere. Absolutely.
People just casually toss around these terms like, oh, I'm anxiously attached,
Mm-hmm.
or they're on a dating app looking for partners who are secure.
Right. And it often sounds like, this kind of elaborate personality fluff.
Exactly. Like astrology mixed with a bit of amateur psychology. You're just trying to categorize partners into these neat little boxes.
And that superficial, highly popularized interpretation is, frankly, a massive disservice to what we're actually talking about here.
It really is.
If you treat attachment styles like just another dating preference, you completely miss the point. You miss that this system is far more fundamental, it's biological, and it's much less negotiable than any personality test.
That's it. And that's why our deep dive today is really about challenging that misconception head on.
Mm-hmm.
We want to go beyond the relationship checklists to uncover what adult attachment styles really are. They are not fixed personality traits. They are not inherent flaws. They are, at their core, neurobiological survival strategies. They got encoded in your earliest years. It's your relational operating system.
And we're going to be examining the hard science behind those behaviors, the ones that sometimes get dismissed as irrational or too needy, or on the other side, too cold.
Right.
Our goal here is to shift your perspective entirely. So you can look at your own patterns or maybe those of your partner, not with that typical judgment or frustration.
Yeah, without the blame.
Without the blame, but with curiosity, with compassion, and with this really profound understanding that at the end of the day, this is your body trying to keep you safe.
So we've set our mission. Let's just lay down the core premise, the real talk line for this entire deep dive.
Okay.
Your attachment style is how your body learned to survive closeness. It's an operating system designed not for, say, optimal connection, but for survival under the very specific conditions of your early life.
Which naturally leads us to the big foundational and I think provocative question we have to answer before we go any further.
What is it?
Are attachment styles fundamentally about seeking love? Or are they about ensuring safety?
And based on all the work, starting with John Bowlby's monumental research in the mid-20th century and really every piece of neurobiological research since then,
Right.
the answer is just so clearly weighted towards safety, survival. Love might be the amazing side effect of a secure system, but safety is the primal drive.
That's the key distinction. Bowlby didn't see that enduring emotional bond as, something merely sentimental.
No.
He viewed attachment as an innate psychobiological system. It's essential for survival, right up there with the drives for food, water, or sex.
From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
It's completely straightforward. For a highly vulnerable, helpless human infant, proximity to a caregiver meant guaranteed protection from predators, from accidents, from environmental exposure.
So being separated was, evolutionarily speaking, a death sentence.
It was a death sentence. To be alone is to be extinct. So your entire biological and neurological system becomes intensely geared toward tracking and keeping that protective figure as close as possible.
It explains why a baby's cry isn't just, sadness. It's a biological alarm bell.
Yes.
It's designed specifically to activate the caregiver's response to get them to come closer.
And that system, which gets calibrated in infancy, maintains two vital complementary functions that continue to guide us as adults.
Okay, let's break those down.
The first is the safe haven. This means the attachment figure is the person you can return to in times of distress or fear or threat. When your system detects danger, the immediate impulse is to seek out that person to achieve, rapid stress recovery and emotional regulation.
So in adulthood, a safe haven might look like turning to your partner immediately after you get some bad news at work.
Exactly.
Or just feeling intensely comforted by their physical presence after something frightening happens. They're your emotional landing pad.
That's a great way to put it. And the second function is the secure base. This is the reliable foundation from which the infant, or the adult, feels safe enough to go out and explore the world, to take risks, pursue goals, engage in learning.
So if you have a solid, trustworthy base, you can confidently wander away from it.
You can, because you know that support is available should you need it.
This duality is fascinating. So it's not just about emotional first aid when things go wrong, which is the safe haven.
Right.
It's also about having the fundamental confidence to thrive and take risks when things are going right.
Right.
That's the secure base.
Mm-hmm.
But how does this, relatively brief early environment, those first few years, get so locked in? How does it translate into these powerful, often really rigid adult relational maps?
Okay, so this is where we have to talk about the internal working model, or the IWM.
The IWM.
This is really the neurobiological core of attachment theory. Early, repeated interactions with your primary caregiver, we're talking thousands of micro moments of seeking connection and getting a response. All of that creates a mental map. It's that relational operating system we mentioned before. And crucially, this is not just a collection of memories.
It's an encoded prediction.
Precisely. It's a neural encoding of relationship expectations. It gets logged significantly in memory structures like the hippocampus, but it's integrated throughout the whole limbic system.
So the brain is using the past to predict the future.
Yes. It's a mechanism designed to optimize energy use. Think about it. If I know my partner is reliably responsive, I don't need to spend all this energy hypervigilantly tracking them. I can relax.
So the IWM is literally a survival script, and it dictates my expectations about how relationships work. And you mentioned that a secure IWM has 3 vital components baked into it. I think we need to go into depth on those because they really form the blueprint for healthy relating.
They do. The secure IWM basically answers 3 fundamental questions for you. First, a model of others as trustworthy and supportive.
So people I care about are generally good and available.
Exactly. The second, a model of the self as valuable and worthy of care. This is your internalized self-worth. It's the belief that my needs matter and they deserve attention.
And the third one, which I think is the most subtle but maybe the most important,
I agree,
is a model of the self as effective when interacting with others.
Yes. This model of self-effectiveness determines how you handle conflict and vulnerability. If your IWM is secure, when you raise a concern with your partner, say, hey, I felt hurt when you were late.
Yeah.
You expect that conversation to be heard, to be validated, and potentially acted upon, leading to repair.
But if your IWM is insecure,
Then you expect that exact same expression of vulnerability to lead to conflict or dismissal or even abandonment.
wow.
The secure IWM gives you the confidence to engage with the world, knowing your actions are likely to yield positive results, especially in connection.
So if the IWM is the survival script, it dictates not just what I feel, but how I expect to feel when I even try to communicate. This takes us perfectly into the adult experience. Because if attachment is about survival, these old strategies, the insecure ones, they don't just fade away, do they?
No, not at all. They kick in when the stakes are highest, usually with the people we love the most.
And this is the crucial disconnect for so many people. They say things like, I'm a highly functioning CEO, or I'm perfectly calm with my colleagues. Why am I only a mess when I'm dealing with my partner?
Right. The sources are absolutely clear on this. You don't typically see your attachment style fully activated when you're dealing with a stranger or a boss. It activates when 3 conditions are met.
What are they?
When you truly love someone, when you fear losing them, or when you feel emotionally exposed. It's the depth of the connection that flips the switch.
Why is that?
Because when we are deeply connected to an adult partner, we are unconsciously assigning them the role of our secure base.
Yeah.
They become the primary regulator of our safety. So if that secure base feels distant or unavailable or seems to signal rejection, the brain doesn't categorize that as just some minor relational stress.
Which brings us to our debate question for this section. Why do we act so irrational only with the people we care about?
And the answer lies in the physiological takeover, the amygdala hijack.
That phrase sounds dramatic, but it's scientifically accurate, isn't it?
It is. It perfectly describes the neuroscience of the attachment alarm, your primitive fear center, the amygdala. It takes one look at the perceived threat of disconnection and signals a life or death emergency.
Because to the old brain, disconnection is death.
It is death. And this triggers the powerful hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis, the stress response system.
And your body immediately floods with these potent emergency hormones.
Right. Cortisol, norepinephrine. This hormonal rush forces a really dramatic cognitive shift.
So the logical part of your brain, the planning and reasoning center your prefrontal cortex.
The part that manages reasonable concern and patience and perspective.
It's essentially taken offline.
Completely offline. The instantaneous reactive limbic system takes total control. At that point, the individual is no longer responding to the current reality. They are reacting to the old encoded trauma of potential abandonment.
So the person who finds themselves, frantically sending 5 follow-up texts or demanding immediate proof of love.
Or, on the other side, slamming the door, retreating into a stone wall, and just going numb for days.
They aren't acting out of malice or cruelty or a lack of logic.
No, they are acting out of a biological imperative to survive the perceived disconnection. It's a physiological response that temporarily overpowers all rational thought.
And the research adds another critical layer to this, right? This isn't just situational.
No, it's physically encoded. Studies demonstrate that early, consistent care directly influences the initial calibration and the continued regulation of that HPA stress response system throughout your whole life.
So if your early environment was constantly signaling threat, if your safe haven was unreliable,
Then your nervous system remains calibrated to react faster and more intensely to perceived threats in adulthood. You essentially have a hair trigger alarm.
this moves attachment out of the realm of, soft psychology and into hard neurobiology.
Exactly.
And to illustrate that, I think we need to dive into some of this really fascinating research involving event-related potentials, or ERPs, which measure brain activity.
Yes, this specific study is incredible. It looked at women who had not yet had children, nulliparous women, as they viewed various infant faces showing different emotions.
And the researchers were looking for
What? For measurable differences in automatic brain responses that correlated with the adult women's own attachment styles. This confirms that our relational OS affects how our physical hardware processes social cues.
Okay, let's translate this for everyone listening. We're looking at two measurable brain components, N170 and P300 amplitudes. What are they, practically speaking?
Okay, so the N170 is related to the very early visual structural encoding of faces. Think of it as how quickly and intensely your brain just registers and processes that a face is present. It's a measure of preconscious vigilance.
Got it. And the P300?
The P300 component comes slightly later. It's related to attention, cognitive resources, and processing capacity. It shows how much brain power you're actually dedicating to analyzing that face and its emotional content.
Okay, so N170 is the I see a face and it might be important signal. And P300 is the, okay, now I'm going to spend cognitive energy figuring out what this face means.
Okay, got it.
So what did the study reveal about the different attachment styles?
We saw these incredibly distinct patterns linked to insecurity. So the anxiously attached women exhibited significantly larger N170 amplitudes compared to the avoidant women in response to all infant faces, regardless of emotion, even neutral or joyful faces.
Wow. So before they even consciously registered the emotion, their brain was running a higher level of vigilance just at the sight of a face. That is the biological definition of hyperawareness. They are structurally wired to notice every social cue, to hyperscan the horizon for connection or for threat.
Precisely. And that hyperactivation continued right into the P300 component. Anxious individuals showed greater P300 amplitudes specifically to crying infant faces compared to the avoidant individuals.
So the distress signals really grab their attention.
They capture and sustain their conscious attention with immense intensity. It reflects that fear response and hyperactivation we see in their adult relationships.
It's basically proof that their relational OS is hardwired to prioritize signals of distress and potential loss.
Right.
Okay, so now let's look at the other side of the spectrum, secure and avoidant.
Right. So the securely attached women, conversely, showed larger P300 amplitudes to all infant faces compared to the avoidant women.
Not just the crying ones.
Not just the crying ones. They didn't just react strongly to distress. They displayed this heightened, consistent ability to attend to and process all social emotional cues. This is vital for a sensitive and effective caregiving system. They're just generally more attuned to the entire social field.
Which means the avoidant attached women showed less overall brain activity.
Yes. They showed the least brain activity in response to these emotional cues. And this aligns perfectly with the deactivating strategies we're about to discuss. Yes. And that dictates whether you hyperfocus on connection, generally attuned to the environment, or you try to tune connection out entirely. It acts as an implicit memory filter, influencing every interpretation and prediction we make about our relationships.
Now that we have this foundational neurobiological understanding, let's transition to the specific adult strategies that emerge from this relational OS.
The methods the nervous system develops to cope when caregivers are unreliable.
Exactly. And we have to view these insecure strategies, anxiety, avoidance, and disorganization, not as character flaws, but as deeply ingrained, even resourceful adaptations.
The child's brain is an engineering marvel. It is simply optimizing its behavior to maximize its chances of safety and proximity based on the, inconsistent or cold data it receives.
Okay, let's start with anxious attachment, which is characterized by the hyperactivation strategy.
This style typically develops when a caregiver provided connection and support, but was unreliably available.
Sometimes there, sometimes not.
Right. They might be loving and present sometimes, but distracted others, or maybe they were only responsive when the child reached a high pitch of distress. This creates what psychologists call a partial reinforcement schedule.
Like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine. If energetic attempts to seek proximity sometimes succeed, the system learns to be persistent, vigilant, and to escalate its distress to guarantee a response.
So the strategy then is to maintain constant surveillance over the relationship, coupled with these energetic attempts to seek proximity, reassurance, and support.
But there's a deep underlying lack of confidence that these resources will actually be provided unless the alarm is loud enough.
This leads to what are called protest behaviors in adulthood, right?
Yes, these are the classic hyperactivating strategies designed to elicit a response and close that distance. This could be frantic or repeated calls and texts, emotional flooding during a conflict, even manufacturing a crisis to force closeness.
Or keeping score.
Oh, absolutely. Keeping detailed mental tabs on who called whom last or who seems to care more. The goal is always the same. Restore proximity and silence that amygdala alarm.
And we absolutely must apply the real talk reframe here.
Please.
Anxious attachment is not neediness. It is a deeply rooted fear of loss. It's an ancient mechanism designed to prevent you from being abandoned on the savannah.
That reframe is so essential for self-compassion. These individuals are running a highly sensitive threat detection system. Their nervous system treats subtle withdrawal from a partner like a delayed text or them spending time with friends as a major existential alarm bell.
And this vigilance shows up in their emotional processing, leading to what's called emotion amplification.
Yes. They don't just feel sad, they amplify worries, they exaggerate depressive reactions to potential losses, and they're prone to, socially destructive outbursts or impulsive, demanding behavior when their perceived need for connection is thwarted.
They have to broadcast their distress loudly.
Because, historically, they learn that quiet distress wasn't heard. They lack confidence in getting the resources they need unless they make themselves undeniable.
This detailed look really forces us to face a complex personal debate question.
Which is,
when does needing reassurance, which is a legitimate human need, become self-abandonment?
wow. Yeah. It crosses that critical line when the hyperactivating person loses touch with their own core identity, their boundaries, their intrinsic needs, by making the other person's availability the central organizing force of their entire life.
So they stop tracking themselves.
They stop tracking themselves. They're so intensely focused on tracking the attachment figure, reading their mood, anticipating their needs, that they stop asking, what do I need or want right now?
And they only ask, what does my partner need so they don't leave me?
Exactly. Their identity, their schedule, their self-worth, it all becomes entirely conditional on the partner's response. It's relying entirely on co-regulation without having any stable foundation of self-regulation.
Okay, now let's pivot to the opposite extreme. Avoidant attachment, which runs the completely oppositional program of deactivation.
Right. The dismissive avoidant operating system is a very elegant, though painful, adaptation to a different neurobiological reality. It develops when caregivers were consistently unresponsive or cold, or when the expression of need or vulnerability was actively punished or shamed or just ignored.
So the system makes a simple calculation.
A very simple calculation. Proximity seeking is futile, painful, or dangerous. The best way to survive is to shut down that entire system.
So if the anxious person learned to yell louder, the avoidant person learned to just cut the emotional cord, mute the alarm, and retreat into this kind of radical self-sufficiency.
The deactivating strategy involves actively denying attachment needs, both consciously and unconsciously. They aggressively prioritize independence, emotional distance, and self-reliance.
And they become profoundly uncomfortable with emotional vulnerability.
Not just in themselves, where feelings might signal weakness, but in others, where intense emotions signals a demand for intimacy that they feel they cannot meet.
The reframing here is so key for understanding them. Avoidance is protection, not coldness.
It's an internal mechanism. It's designed to maintain distance and control after the nervous system learned early on that intimacy meant being hurt or dismissed or overwhelmed. They overvalue self-reliance because others were proven, repeatedly, to be unreliable or demanding.
What are the adult behaviors that show this deactivation strategy? Because it's often more subtle than the anxious protest behaviors.
It is. The behaviors are focused on creating mental and emotional distance when physical distance isn't possible. This includes things like changing the subject when conversation becomes intimate, or hyper-focusing on external tasks like work or hobbies right after a stressful relational event.
Strategic withdrawal.
Yes, strategic withdrawal, long drives alone, or excessive time isolated in their office. They're essentially trying to regulate their emotions alone because they view the relationship itself as the stressor, not the source of regulation.
And we also see this in their tendency toward relationship self-sabotage,
Right.
often when things are going well.
That is the avoidant paradox. They might unconsciously self-sabotage when healthy conflict resolution or consistent acceptance occurs, because that stability violates their internal working model.
Which expects relationships to be unreliable and messy.
Exactly. So they need to generate distance or conflict to restore a sense of emotional predictability that matches their inner template.
Which brings us to the debate question for this style. Is independence always healthy? Or is it sometimes just a highly effective defense mechanism?
Well, in a secure person, autonomy is healthy. For the avoidant individual, it often functions as a defense. While they achieve high levels of self-sufficiency, that overvaluing of self-reliance serves as protection. It prevents them from experiencing the deep and potentially painful dependency that healthy intimacy requires.
So the system just maintains its distance.
Because it views vulnerability, intimacy, and the needs of others as potentially overwhelming or unreliable sources of safety, they rely entirely on self-contained strength to avoid the pain of anticipated rejection.
And finally, we come to the most complex and chaotic of the insecure styles, disorganized attachment.
Often termed fearful avoidant in adulthood.
Right. And this style is so challenging for the individual because it represents a complete internal contradiction in the nervous system. It's a true push-pull dynamic.
The key point here is that the disorganized person desperately wants closeness and fears it intensely at the exact same moment. They are approaching and retreating simultaneously.
It often stems from early care that was inconsistent, chaotic, or outright unsafe.
Yes, where the caregiver was terrifying or traumatized or highly unpredictable. The core trauma is that the attachment figure, the person biologically programmed to be the safe haven, was also the source of fear.
So the child is caught in this impossible neurological bind. Their survival system yells, "Run toward safety." But the source of safety is also the source of danger.
They are running toward the very thing that frightens them.
The Real Talk summary just captures the agony of this. The same person feels like home and danger.
And the adult manifestation, the fearful avoidant OS, holds those two conflicting assumptions. I desperately need connection and safety, but connection is inherently dangerous.
It forces the system to run these contradictory programs.
Which causes extreme emotional exhaustion and rapid oscillation. We see this person swing rapidly between the anxious, pull, intense idealization, hyper-pursuing closeness, and the avoidant pull.
Which is?
Sudden, extreme withdrawal, emotional shutdown, or these inexplicable periods of ghosting when intimacy becomes too real or, oddly, too calm.
They might unconsciously test partners.
Oh, constantly. By pushing them away or creating conflict, searching for proof of the danger they anticipate, or, conversely, searching for proof that this one person will somehow stay despite the chaos. They struggle to trust love that feels calm because chaos and inconsistency are what their nervous system recognizes as normal.
This internal war leads us to the debate question for the disorganized style. How do you even begin to build safety when closeness itself is the trigger for the alarm system?
The answer has to lie in building inner safety first through nervous system regulation, the somatic work we'll get to. A consistent partner helps, but the work starts with acknowledging that proximity, even with a secure partner, will initially trigger that flight, fight, or freeze response.
That brings us directly to the dynamics of relationships, how these individual systems collide in the real world.
Right.
The high engagement topic we see everywhere is the collision between anxious and avoidant individuals, the notorious anxious-avoidant trap.
This dynamic is so common precisely because the two strategies complement each other in a really destructive way. The hyper-activating strategies of the anxiously attached person seeking proximity, validation, reassurance
Are perfectly designed to trigger the deactivating strategies of the avoidantly attached person.
Exactly. Their need for distance, space, independence.
So you get the classic agonizing chase and withdraw cycle.
It creates the self-fueling loop. Imagine a stressful week. The anxious person needs closeness to regulate their fear, so they ask for a long talk.
That urgency immediately triggers the avoidant person's deep-seated fear of engulfment.
causing them to withdraw, maybe burying themselves in work. This withdrawal then amplifies the anxious person's fear, prompting them to chase harder, which drives the avoidant person even further away.
It's a self-fueling loop of dissatisfaction where both people end up confirming their original internal working models.
Yes. The anxious person thinks, see, I knew they would leave, and the avoidant person thinks, see, I knew relationships were suffocating. They reinforce the very pain they were trying to avoid.
And this destructive pairing fuels relationship self-sabotage, which is the key point of Focus 7. Attachment styles are adaptive, not pathological, but what once protected you may now be hurting you.
The self-sabotage is rarely malicious. It's an unconscious cognitive process. It stems from those old survival strategies that get rigidly applied outside of their original context.
The protective patterns designed for childhood risk become the mechanisms that destroy adult intimacy.
And we see several specific mechanisms. One is defensiveness, where any feedback is taken as a threat. Another is pervasive trust, difficulty, intense jealousy, checking a partner's social media.
And we have to come back to the avoidant paradox.
Yes. The avoidance-based self-sabotage is most perverse when the relationship is objectively succeeding. When healthy conflict resolution or genuine acceptance occurs, the avoidant person feels profoundly unsettled because the reality of calm, safe connection violates their IWM.
It doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right. So they generate conflict or emotional distance, not because they want the relationship to end, but because they need to restore the emotional predictability of their inner template.
This all suggests a deeper, almost deterministic force at play, which leads to our central debate question here. Do we choose partners, or does our attachment choose for us?
The patterns certainly tend to repeat. Our internal working models powerfully guide our responsiveness to others. We unconsciously gravitate toward dynamics that, while painful, feel familiar and validate our existing expectations.
So if your IWM expects high drama or abandonment, a calm, consistent partner might actually trigger anxiety because they don't feel right.
Exactly. It's that uncomfortable feeling of something being too good or too easy. That unfamiliar safety feels threatening, prompting the insecure person to unconsciously seek out a partner or a dynamic that restores the familiar normalcy, even if that normalcy is harmful.
Recognizing that tendency is the first step toward gaining agency.
And when we talk about when survival strategy becomes self-sabotage, we must pause for a critical layer of nuance.
Okay.
While many instances of hypervigilance are based on redundant trauma responses from childhood, we have to acknowledge that for others, particularly those experiencing systemic threats like racial discrimination or oppression, maintaining protective vigilance remains a crucial, necessary response to ongoing real threats.
That is a vital distinction. For some listeners, the task of healing is unlearning old patterns that are no longer necessary. For others, healing isn't about dismantling vigilance entirely.
No, it's about differentiating between the past and the present and maintaining protective strategies where they are genuinely needed for survival in a society that continues to pose real threats. We must approach these moments with deep curiosity rather than simplistic judgment.
It ensures we never pathologize a legitimate response to an ongoing threat. The goal is always appropriate responsiveness, not total emotional complacency.
Absolutely.
We've dissected the problem, defined the strategies, and explored the neurobiological origins. The biggest, most hopeful question remains: can attachment styles change? Are we sentenced to run this relational operating system forever?
This is the most hopeful and empowering part of the research. The critical point is that attachment is fundamentally flexible. We are not genetically determined to remain insecure. The goal is to move toward what's called earned secure attachment.
Earned security.
It's a classification for adults who demonstrate the awareness, emotional flexibility, and relational skills of a secure individual, despite having experienced an insecure childhood. They've actively engaged in the process of updating their OS.
Earned security is such a powerful concept because it implies agency and effort. But here is the real talk insight that often gets missed.
And it's so important.
Insight alone doesn't change, attachment safety does.
That is the single most vital piece of knowledge for this entire deep dive. The attachment system is rooted in the deep, non-logical, implicit parts of the brain. The limbic system, the brainstem. You can intellectually understand every theory, but change doesn't happen until your body, your nervous system, receives new data.
New data that is consistent and overwhelming enough to overwrite the old survival script.
Your brain needs to experience, repeatedly and reliably, that vulnerability is met with safety, not punishment.
So what does the active, intentional work of earning security actually look like? The sources suggest it requires simultaneous work on 3 pillars.
The first pillar is awareness. But deeper than just naming your style, it means recognizing the automatic limbically-driven reactions, that attachment alarm, as they happen in real time. The goal is to create just enough space, a microsecond, for the logical prefrontal cortex to interrupt the automated program.
This is where practical tools like a trigger diary come in.
Yes. You note not just what happened, but the action urge, that I want to call 5 times, slam the door, the emotions, and most importantly, the physical sensations.
So rapid heartbeat, the churning stomach, tightness in the chest.
That somatic awareness is key. If you can name the physical experience, that's my anxious system trying to hyper-pursue, you can begin to create that space between stimulus and response that gives you the power of choice.
The second pillar is safe relationships and co-regulation.
Right. Since the old pattern was encoded relationally, it must be updated relationally. The therapeutic relationship itself often serves as the initial secure base, modeling healthy attachment and consistency.
That consistency and attuned presence allows the nervous system to shift from protection mode to connection mode.
This is where you get the necessary experience of co-regulation, the ability to borrow the calm from another person's stable nervous system. You feel firsthand what it's like for your physiological response to be soothed by a reliable external source.
And the third pillar is perhaps the most necessary for deep, lasting change because it works bottom-up: nervous system regulation.
Since the attachment alarm lives in the old brain, we have to speak its language, sensation, breath, and movement.
We have concrete, powerful somatic tools for this. A primary example is the physiological sigh.
Yes. Discovered by Dr. Andrew Huberman and colleagues, it is the fastest, most immediate way to voluntarily calm your nervous system.
So describe how to do it in practice.
You inhale deeply through your nose until your lungs are full, but right at the peak, you sneak in a second, short, sharp inhale. Then you exhale slowly and completely through your mouth, making the exhale noticeably longer than the inhale.
And that double inhale reinflates collapsed air sacs.
And the long, slow exhale activates the vagus nerve, sending a direct message of safety to the brainstem. It's a direct command to the limbic system. The threat is over. We can relax.
It bypasses the intellectual circuit entirely.
Entirely. Another critical technique is somatic anchoring. When that high emotional activation hits, when the amygdala hijack is underway, you intentionally shift your focus away from the catastrophizing story in your head and onto the physical reality of being safe right now.
Feel the weight of your body in the chair.
Notice the solidity of your feet on the floor. Look around the room and name 5 objects you can see.
That sensory focus pulls your brain out of the fight-or-flight spiral and anchors it firmly in the present moment, forcing the logical brain to come back online.
These techniques are so crucial because they empower you. They prove to your nervous system that you, the adult, possess the capacity to act as your own safe haven, even before you seek co-regulation from a partner.
This all brings us to our final debate question around healing. Can you heal attachment wounds entirely alone?
Well, while self-work awareness, journaling, somatic regulation is absolutely essential to start the process, the scientific consensus strongly suggests that safe relationships provide the crucial experience required for complete nervous system recalibration.
The brain needs to encode new relational data.
Yes. When I am vulnerable, I am met with reliable safety and support, not just when I am vulnerable, I am fine on my own. That internalization of secure patterns is optimized through attuned connection.
So it sounds like self-work is necessary to clear the brush, but connection is required to plant the new seed.
That's a perfect way to put it. You build a foundation of self-regulation, but you test and solidify that foundation through co-regulation.
So we've traveled from the evolutionary need for safety all the way to the modern tools of earned security. We have to end by reiterating the core truth of this entire deep dive.
Your attachment style is not who you are. It's simply how you learn to connect. It was an ingenious, necessary feature designed to help you survive. It was a strategy for resilience.
And the power of choice that comes with this knowledge is immense. The internal working models, the neural maps we discussed, they're not fixed destiny. They are like well-trodden paths in the brain that can be updated.
When you recognize the alarm, you gain the ability to engage your prefrontal cortex and choose a new, secure response, instead of defaulting to the automatic, painful survival program.
Recognizing these deep patterns as inherited strategies of resilience, rather than personal flaws, is the necessary first step. It gives you true agency over your emotional life.
It really does.
Which leaves us with one final, profound, and I think provocative thought for you to consider as you reflect on your own relational operating system.
What would your life look like? Who would you be in your relationships, large and small, if your nervous system felt truly and deeply safe and grounded in all of them?
If that chronic state of low-grade stress, or the frantic chase, or that sudden need for radical independence, what if it just melted away? It's an exercise in imagining your highest capacity for connection.
It is the ultimate goal of earned security.
A truly moving and insightful discussion. Thank you for guiding us through this, from the amygdala hijack all the way to the path of earned security.
The journey to earn secure attachment is arguably one of the most important acts of self-compassion you can undertake. It's challenging, but it is entirely achievable.
Absolutely. Now go begin noticing those triggers, try a physiological sigh, and start mapping out your journey toward earned security. We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.